We're live.
We are live. Yeah.
Greetings, Facebook family.
Facebook family.
Sunday
hello.
night.
Sunday evening, and it is the 30th of June, and it's a beautiful Sunday evening.
30th of June.
Yeah, time is flying by. The sun is finally out, and it's a very relaxing evening amongst nature.
Indeed.
Yeah, which is one of the topics that we're going to discuss this evening in a short 20-minute podcast that we're going to do today.
Yep. We were talking about nature. Pete, what's your views on nature?
Well, I find great peace and tranquility when I'm amongst nature. To me, nature has always really been three things. It's been truthful, compassionate, and tolerant.
Interesting.
And when I look at how nature is in its truest essence, it is those three things for me.
Okay.
A tree, an apple tree, can only be an apple tree. It can be nothing else.
Ah, good point.
So it's
Okay.
really truthful to itself.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Apple tree. Now, what does nature mean to me? Compassionate, I would debate. Why? Because I think she's more neutral than compassionate. I think that she doesn't care about us per se. She's completely neutral to everything around her.
Yeah.
And so, but if you respect her and respect the law of nature, I think that she will respect you too. Not because she has any sort of input into that respectability, but just the fact that you respect her law.
Yeah.
That she's going to treat you accordingly. But go ahead.
Yeah, the reason why I said compassionate is because when you think of like an apple tree can bear fruit, and it can also give us shade. So we can go and eat the apples, and we can actually have shade underneath it.
Yeah.
And then it's also tolerant in the fact that you could chop it down and it won't fight back. It will just be a tree because that's all it is.
Yeah. Interesting. That damn apple tree. That's caused a lot of trouble over the years.
It's
Hasn't it?
caused fucking a lot of trouble.
Especially that one apple. Especially that bloody apple.
Yeah.
That forbidden fruit.
Yeah, the forbidden fruit.
You were warned. Not eating
Don't
of the tree of knowledge.
eat it. Yeah.
And the more knowledgeable you become, the more painful life becomes,
It
right?
is, yeah. But the reason why I mentioned an apple tree is because that was something that you wrote about briefly in your book about nature, and I think you were using an apple tree and an orchard as an example of
yes.
to kind of show the audience something a bit bigger than that. Do you remember what that?
Yeah, I do. I had a conversation with Pete a few weeks ago over a coffee. And it was a comical conversation because I was comparing how human beings are so self-aware in comparison with nature. And so I said an apple tree, for instance, sat in an orchard just growing apples and doing what an apple tree does, which is just grow and produce apples, and stands there in being. It's always in the now. Yet if a strong wind or a hurricane rips through the orchard one night and removes a huge bough out of an apple tree, it doesn't wake up in the morning and start talking to its neighbours saying, I feel so self-aware. You know, I lost my major limb last night and now I almost feel naked and I feel ugly, and don't look at me. Don't look at me. I've lost my limb, and come to think of it, now I'm noticing that your apples are bigger than mine. And they're more plentiful than mine, and they're more shiny than mine. Oh, I'm now so self-aware. I've got no self-confidence. An apple tree or any tree doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't.
Nature doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
It just exists in the moment of being.
Yeah.
Right.
That's beautiful, because I think as people we put these human experiences that we have we make such an emphasis of it that it takes us away from actually being like nature and returning to our true being, which is to be back with nature. Fundamentally, that's what happens to all of us, right?
Absolutely.
That's where we all come from.
Absolutely. Fundamentally, and I don't want to appear morbid, we're all going to be topsoil.
Yeah.
We're all going back to topsoil, which will help fertilise the ground which these trees grow in.
Yeah, it was actually, and I'm not sure whether we were talking about it when we were walking through the university parks, but there's these new types of burial pods that you can get where you can actually choose what type of tree that you're going to be.
Yes.
which is for me is beautiful.
Me
because
too.
I can walk around an amazing park and I can look at an oak tree and I can say, I know exactly where I'm going in 50 years from now or 100 years from now.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea, isn't it? It's a
yeah.
beautiful idea to think that you could choose your specific plant or tree that you wish to be buried under, and
Yeah.
you feed that thing. You know, people could come and sit under its shade,
Yeah.
and remember you in that way,
Yeah.
as opposed to like this stone with with writing on it, with dates and morbidity and things like that. But I think it's a great idea to tree pots.
And it's interesting, because if you were to take that as an example, and then you put yourself into a kind of a forward state, and you imagine yourself as that tree, you wouldn't have all of these feelings of anxiety or jealousness, which is something that you were pointing at in that parable about the wind howling through the apple orchard.
Yeah.
Breaking down the
breaking off one bough, and she's being very aware, becomes jealous now because she doesn't look aesthetically as pleasing as the other apple trees, and any tree. You know, there's more wisdom, Pete, in one leaf than there is in all the books and all the libraries. Why is that? Because if you look at any leaf, it has this inherent intelligence that knows that the heavens are going to open at some point and I will be fed. The water that I need to sustain myself is on its way. They have amazing patience. It doesn't think that I'm going to consume all the water. It's very happy to share with all its sibling leaves. So nature has this inherent understanding of balance.
Yes.
Right. We as a species, we're so greedy that we want to hoard as much as we can for ourselves and our immediate family, and to hell with everything else. As long as we're okay.
Yeah.
And
that individualism is actually quite a big problem in our society, isn't it? Because we see that a lot when you've these big corporations that have absolutely shitloads of cash, but then, you know, what are they doing for the other people who are starving in the world?
Well, yes, a good question. We don't. Who knows, Pete?
But who knows?
Who knows? Who knows what type of philanthropy and altruism is going on behind the scenes? But we do know that these big multinational PLCs that have these hundreds of millions of dollars of profits, they pay little taxes. It's all about profit, and you know, we could go down that rabbit hole. We really could go down that rabbit hole and discuss the whole nature of big pharma, for instance, and I think these pills and potions that they peddle onto the world and create billions of dollars of profits. Yet they're absolute poison. The cancer
and they actually try to keep people sick.
They keep people sick, and that we can do that.
We should do that on another podcast. There was something else that you mentioned which I wanted to go on about. And that was nature is this equal opportunity employer.
And I use that. Because she is. Because she is, isn't she? She's the ultimate equal opportunities employer. I'll give you a couple of examples. Whether you are a pauper, or you are the king of Siam, or the richest man on the planet, or woman, no discrimination here. And when the Grim Reaper comes for you, you can't negotiate or renegotiate with death based on your bank balance, on the label or the role that you're playing on this planet. I don't care if you are the CEO of Apple. Steve Jobs is a great example. When it was his time, do you think he said, "Excuse me, death, do you know who I am? I'm worth $75 billion. People look up to me everywhere I go. Let me get my affairs in order. Let me spend a little bit of time, you know, placing things around so I'll be happy, and I can then leave knowing that I've closed all the doors behind me." No, back of the collar. You're coming with me now because now it's your time. Nature doesn't negotiate with whether you are the pool cleaner, the toilet cleaner, or you're an oil-rich sheikh sat on your $300 million yacht. It's time for you to go. You're coming with me now.
And I guess this is where faith comes in a little bit, right? Because you have to have faith and believe in nature that when it is your time, then it is your time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think this is where faith can be so beautiful, because if you do believe that, hey, my real reward is when I leave this place,
Yeah.
right? And that's an interesting concept on its own, isn't it? My real reward for the religious is when they leave this testing ground called planet Earth.
Yeah.
Yet for the atheist, he has absolutely nothing to die for, but everything to live for.
Yeah.
Right? It's a complete antithesis, isn't it?
Opposite.
The complete opposite. I'll give you another example of how nature can be completely brutal but completely neutral. I'm a keen surfer. I like free diving and diving. I spent my whole life in the ocean, and again, whether you are some guy walking around picking up litter on the beach, or whether you happen to be Donald Trump that wants a quick dip, you go into a 2 or 3 meter wave and you don't respect that, she will rag you like a doll and hold you under and put you through that washing machine. And if you're not an experienced water person, whether you're Trump with that shredded wheat on his head, or whether you are a pool cleaner just nipping in to cool off from the summer sun, it will take your life in 2 minutes, and it won't say, that's the President of the United States, let me give him a pass. Doesn't work like that. She's brutal. And so my point about all this is this: why do we assign superiority and inferiority to people based on their wealth, their stature, their role that they play down here for these 80 or 90 years? Why can't we meet people at eye level? Why is there a superiority complex and an inferiority complex based on people's perceived role and the zeros they have in their bank account? What do you think, Pete?
Well, I guess it's part of the environment which we've been conditioned in and brought up in, and how we've been programmed from a very early age. It's the kind of the system that we've been, the world of sin that we've been born into in some respects. And I notice it in dealing with a lot of very wealthy people. There's sometimes they try to kind of instill a certain amount of power or fear over you to try and keep you in your place. But I think a lot of it comes down to conditioning, because it's one of the things I like about personal training and exercise is once you can strip all of the wealth away from it, and it comes down to, okay, well, how fast can you do this particular exercise, or how many reps can you do with that weight? So it's a very much kind of a real testing thing of the human body and their spirit to be able to get through that particular exercise. So that's how I break it down.
Okay.
Because it's it's the kind of the
Okay.
truth is in.
All right. Okay. So let's look at that a little deeper. You said about cultural indoctrination, which, for all intent and purposes, that is how we learn everything, right? Because there's no filtering system in the first 7 years of our life, because the conscious mind is not in attendance. So there's no filter. Okay, so there's no.
Is the conscious mind? When does that get developed? Would you say?
7 years old.
About 7 years old.
Between 6 and 7
is when you start to become a bit more conscious and aware of who you are in your environment.
Very much so. But more important than that, Pete, you start to question what you are told, because for 6 or 7 years, everything you are told by anybody goes into the tape recording machine.
Okay.
And there's no filtering system, there's no conscious awareness to question what you've been taught.
So the only filter that could come in is our primary caregivers and what they're influencing and opening our eyes to.
Okay, so if that is the conscious awareness that you're holding out for, or that if they are the people that are responsible for critiquing what's going into your software, then that explains why the majority of the population on planet Earth are struggling. Right?
Yes. Because even those people are not of a consciously sound mind to know that they can be conditioning their particular child. So some people are, and I think this whole movement around being more conscious is certainly growing, which
Yeah,
is
it is.
kind of a lot what these podcasts and things are
Yeah,
about.
yeah, and there are some repetition in these podcasts because it's damn important, because
Yeah.
you've got to get it, right?
Yeah.
You know, you can get it at a concept or an idea, but the more you hear it, the more not only will it register in your conscious mind, but you can then go off and explore it and research it for yourself to understand it at a level needed to get it.
Yes.
Right? And going back to the cultural response,
Yeah.
which is what we're talking about here. Me and Pete were talking about that again a couple of weeks ago. About isn't it remarkably coincidental that where you happen to be culturally raised happens to be coincidentally where the one true real God exists.
So expand on that a little bit.
Okay, so religion is a hot potato, we do know, but I think it's an essential example because I think it captures purely how we are indoctrinated based on our culture.
Yeah.
Our nervous system is just wide open, our brain is wide open, and when we're told by those who are responsible for our growth that Jesus is the real Messiah and God is the creator of all the universe, you're going to have that all over Western Europe, right? You're going to have that Catholicism all over Europe, Christianity all over Europe in different pockets of areas where that belief was propagated.
Yeah.
If you were born in the Middle East or North Africa, guess what? Your parents are going to tell you very clearly, the Prophet was Muhammad and Allah is your true God and no other. All other gods are fake. All 3,999 of them don't exist. Your God's the real one, and your prophet is the real one, and your book is the one that doesn't tell any lies.
And the same is true for all of the other countries, Hinduism,
Absolutely,
India,
absolutely.
Buddhism, and China.
Exactly, Pete. Right?
And well, I mean, it's an interesting thing about what China are doing, because they're really, the Communist Party is stripping out all religion.
Yep.
So it's nothing.
Yeah.
They are just almost machines.
Yeah, sure.
Which is a conditioning aspect to kind of remove that they're almost becoming the hierarchy themselves. It's almost as though the Communist Party is becoming the ruling religion, if you like.
Well, it is, isn't it? If you can take the next generation and brainwash them into thinking that there's nothing other than your government to keep you safe and to provide jobs and to put food on the table, you are going to worship them like anything else.
Yeah.
Right? And that brings us on to another subject of idolatry, false idolatry, putting these idols on pedestals that have no place being there. Pop stars and actors and actresses, and we put them on this pedestal and we worship at their altar. Yet you're never going to meet them. They will never care for you personally. Yet they rely on your sycophantic nature as much as you rely on them to give your life meaning.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, and it can almost, for example, if there's a footballer and he doesn't score the penalty or something, suddenly you get this collective group of people that, he's a fucking idiot or he's fucking shit. And they actually get stressed and angry over something that is just like, seems so insignificant.
Yeah, so innocuous. And in Colombia, in the World Cup, couple of World Cups back, their centre half scored an own goal, and he was a hero before the World Cup, and then on return they assassinated him.
Wow.
So this is how we get lost in this whole nature of, we put people on a pedestal, and then when they fall, it's a long way to fall. Their fall from grace is usually public, which is why suicide and depression and all this types of mental impairment has become very much the common theme.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more popular,
more and more prominent. And this nation, this world we live in right now, in this culture we live in right now, it's got a huge hand to play in all this.
Yeah, and it has, and it's also quite a disturbing place, because we have an immense access to information, and some of that information we're not sure whether it's accurate or not, or whether we can trust it. Whereas prior to this digital era which we stepped into, it was somewhat, you know, a little bit more trusted to a degree,
Yeah.
or rather there were different types of programs which we would buy into that
Yeah.
wouldn't really allow us to have access to all of those other bits of information. So our conscious awareness wasn't quite as broad as it is now.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword, isn't it, as well, Pete? Because if you live in a small contained community and you're told a certain set of behaviours and parameters that you can't step outside, that's also going to keep you ignorant. And the moment you start to learn different aspects of other people's behavioural traits, and, you know, I said to you before that I could take you as a good Christian boy, at 1 month old, and yeah, exactly. And I could take Pete to the Amazon, and I could drop him into a indigenous Amazonian headhunting colony.
Yeah.
And then by the time he's 7 years old, he would be lopping off other tribes people's heads, putting them in pots, shrinking them and sticking them on spears, and then thinking that's the most natural thing in the fucking world. Why? And you would argue that wasn't a natural thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think that comes back to that my God is the right one because I just know he is. You don't know he is. You don't know anything. You were told he was. It's a story that your culture has imprinted into you.
Yeah.
And this is where nature again sets us all apart. It doesn't worship anything other than being in the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. That was really well put. Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
and if
yeah,
we can mimic nature, if we can just be in the moment like nature, and just understand that this thing, this universe, this thing called God, is always around us and within us every single moment.
Yes, yeah, that was excellently put. I could not, yeah. So you briefly talked about the importance of meditation and understanding the experience of the now. Is it realistic to live in the now?
What a question that is. What a question that is. Well,
it's certainly challenging.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
so what? Okay.
But you know, the more I go down this path of living in the now, it's amazing where I can sometimes see my mind being off in an anxious state about something that I have to do in a future moment.
Yeah.
And then also being, you know, rarely now, but you know, sometimes depressed for something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I catch myself moving into one of those different states, I suddenly realize, well, I'm actually not living in the now and focusing on what it is that I have to do in this present moment in time.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about when you focus into that moment and into the now is that you start to build momentum around what it feels like to be in that now state and to be in that now moment, so that you can continue driving forward. And I'm always reminded of you know, when I'm out on the basketball court or I'm on the punch bag, there's no kind of concept of past or future. You're just in the moment.
Yeah.
And you're just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah.
And you build your skill level up in that moment of now.
Yes, it's a great example when we're doing things that we're fully engaged in.
Yeah.
Like right now.
Yeah.
Right now we are in the now. We
Yes.
are present. Now when you're engaging with me like this, I would argue that it wouldn't matter whatever's going on in your life right now. You could be going through a messy divorce.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you maybe lost a loved one recently. If you are engaged with me right now, in this moment, you are not suffering.
Yeah.
You're not hurting.
Yeah.
The moment I bring you out of the now, or you disengage from the now, you look over my shoulder, and then you start to think about whatever it is that's making you sad. Then you lose conscious awareness and you become a vehicle for suffering again, not because of the event itself, but the story that you're building around the event.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if we can be in the now, like Eckhart Tolle say, we're not going to suffer because we can't suffer in the now. It's impossible because we're totally present all the time.
Yeah.
Is it realistic? I think that there are avatars, human avatars, that have been here on the planet, thousands of them, I'd imagine. Some don't leave a footprint in the sand. Others will leave a footprint and wait for you to catch up and say, this is why I went this way. Others will just keep walking, and you're free to follow them. They've got no desire to teach, but there's thousands of avatars, I believe, that have attained that awareness of being completely present, completely detached from human suffering.
Yeah.
But is it realistic for most of us? Fuck no.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can't attain an 80-20 level
Yeah.
and strive to be as conscious as we possibly can, and knowing that when we become unconscious, we're going to suffer.
Yes.
But that's part of the human journey. The upshot is, can we alleviate or at least reduce the amount of suffering by coming back to presence,
Yes.
coming back to the moment and realizing that this moment is the only one we'll ever have, and that one can be taken from you in a second, which brings us right the way back to the start. And the equal opportunities employer called nature that's saying, you're coming with me, son.
Yeah.
Off you come. Right. So I think that's a good place to leave it there.
Yeah. I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I think we should expand on that. On
meditation.
that now.
Yeah, the
Meditation
now
aspect
thing
of
in
the now.
meditation is damn important. And I think when we sit in meditation and we can just be on the breath, because it's the breath that is always in the now. You can't breathe in the future and you can't breathe in the past, right?
Yeah.
So it anchors you in the moment.
Was it you who was saying it's six breaths to bring yourself to consciousness?
Six deep breaths, 6 deep diaphragm breaths.
Yeah.
Will bring you back into the moment. Also, it will stimulate the vagus nerve and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system to make you drop you out of anxiety.
Yeah. So just for those that don't know, can you explain what a diaphragmatic breathing is?
Okay, so when we sit, there are many ways to breathe. When we're anxious, we will breathe shallow from the upper chest.
Yeah.
You know, and when we're panicking, when we're doing sport, when we're scared, we'll breathe there from there. But it's been proven scientifically that the most health-inducing breath is one that comes from the diaphragm. So when we take a slow breath in through the nose, if you see my diaphragm, watch, it expands outwards. When most people, when they breathe, they suck it in. It's the other way around. Yeah,
and that's because you have this sheet of muscle, which is the diaphragm, that as you inhale, the diaphragm actually drops as the lungs fill, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what kind of pushes the belly out almost.
Absolutely. So the proper breath, it's in 2 stages. Watch, it goes, and then you take the breath from the diaphragm and pull it up into the rib cage and into the lungs and into the neck and into the brain.
Yes.
So it's a 2-stage breathing process. The first stage is, and you take it from the diaphragm up higher. So try it, Pete.
It's a yoga session.
Yeah. You got it? You got it? And you take 6 of them?
Yeah, 6 of them. And
6 of them, and it brings you back.
And what's amazing about that is the physiological exercise that you're doing is having a psychological change into the body and into the brain.
Absolutely, we can change our physiology.
Change your physiology through the
breathing. Because there are many ways to change our emotions. One of the hardest ways to change your emotion is to think your way out of a problem.
Yeah.
Because if you're already stressed and you can't access that level of intelligence needed to get to that resourceful state where the solutions are, if you keep thinking and thinking and thinking, and you're already down that rabbit hole of, oh, life's awful, and my wife, oh, don't get me started on my mother-in-law, you know, you're never going to think your way out of that situation. But you can change your emotions by your physiology, right? Because look at the word emotion, emotion, energy in motion. So if you change your energy in motion, or your emotions through your physiology,
energy in motion,
emotion,
yeah,
right?
I like that, energy in motion.
So go for a walk, do 50 press-ups, run on the spot for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. When you change your physiology, the body and the mind, science has proved they are working together now as a unit again. You can access that resourcefulness, and then you will get better solutions. Don't try and get the right solutions when you're in a funk, when you're when a cloud's all over you. It won't work. You've got to wait until you come out of that. And the best way to come out of that, movement. Fear, rage, depression, anxiety, they're all physical. So the best way to deal with something physical is get physical.
Get physical.
Right? And on that note, get physical.
Let's get physical.
All right.
Have a great week, guys. And yeah, thanks for watching. And yeah, we'll do another podcast in a couple of days.
We'll see you soon. And if the sun's back, if the sun's gone in, I'll have my bobble hat back on.
Yeah.
In the meantime, enjoy the sun, guys, back in the UK, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you back here soon. You know where we are, DarrenJohnTims.com, Peter Sullivan1, Instagram. And don't forget to follow, share, and be well. Love you guys. Be awesome.
Peace.